Let's begin 402. Actually, in the ICA book, I think second or third chapter dealing with 4 standards exclusively. SCA 240, 250, 260, 402. These 4 put together one chapter. 250, 260, 402 I'm reading now. I'm explaining now. 3402 also I'll explain now. So one of the main topic will be completed. If I complete this 402 and 240. That also if I complete, the main topic will be over. So 402. Auditors consideration relating to services provided by service organization. This is one standard which many don't understand because they don't understand the context of discussion. 3402 talks about assurance report on controls at service organization. Assurance report on controls at service organization. Like what is this 402, 3402 exactly deals with? Suppose there are many companies which outsource their payroll function. Best example is where they outsource their payroll function. Yeah, they outsource the payroll function. Or another example, you can take this Flipkart, Amazon warehouses, central warehouses, where a company which is dealing with some consumer electronics, FMCG products, these companies know what they maintain is they register as a seller on the aggregator platform like Amazon and Flipkart. They register as a seller. But Amazon, for the purpose of improving effectiveness and efficiency of faster delivery, all that, they have constructed big warehouses, central hubs at various cities, where nearby sellers who are registered on Amazon, they can keep their inventory in the warehouse. Amazon will take care of processing, labeling, packing, delivery, everything. Settlement will be done accordingly, the amount which is collected. Now, the inventory is lying with whom? The company's inventory with Amazon warehouse, Amazon. Let us assume, let's simply call it as Amazon. We are the auditor of the company. Let us assume Hindustan Unilever. We are the auditor of the company called Hindustan Unilever, where Hindustan Unilever is storing their inventory with a third party called Amazon, where Amazon is providing many services relating to maintaining the inventory records, that particular inventory, packing it, delivering it, everything. Where this entire process that is followed by Amazon is affecting the accounting records of the Hindustan Unilever. Now, these are the services performed by service organization. These are the services performed by service organization called Amazon. Another example also take. Actually, payroll example, we can even more connect with this standard because payroll is one of the function which is very popular function that is outsourced by companies. Another function function which many companies outsource is accounting function itself. Complete accounting is outsourced. They're not maintaining accounts. They're completely outsourcing accounts to various other entities, especially many foreign entities. They're outsourcing accounting services to Indian entities. Fine. Payroll function we are outsourcing. Payroll function means what? Tell me, payroll is generally a significant cost for any company. Yes or no? The employee cost is one of the significant cost for any company. What will be there in the payroll activities? If you understand this example, the standard becomes easy. What will be there in the payroll activities? First of all, payroll means first of all HR and payroll both put together we'll look into. First, a company will have an employee master where all the list of employees recruited, that list who are active employees will be there. And any employees who are resigning or retiring very soon, that list also will be there in the employee master. And company will maintain an attendance record to recognize loss of pay, nothing but absentees, the leaves, and deductions for the all that. Now, the company is maintaining only these two records. Attendance record is maintained, the entire employee master is maintained. Now, this particular data, periodically on a monthly basis, they need to transfer this data to a company called ADP Incorporation. Best example, ADP. This is a very popular payroll company across the world. More than 70% of the payroll processes in the world are handled by this company for various companies. So this company has transferred this particular the payroll functions, this data, attendance data, employee sheet data, employee master data, just to this particular ADP Incorporation, which is a payroll processing company. What this ADP Incorporation has to do is, they will have a set of legal experts, they will have a set of employees who are working on what should be the taxable amount within the salary composition. They will see what is the taxable amount in that, and how much is the TDS to be deducted, how much is the provident fund to be deducted, how much is the ESI to be deducted. Entire that employees related tax planning work will be done by this particular payroll processing company. And not only that, they will finalize the amount that to be paid as a salary to these 1 lakh employees. This company is, let us assume, having 1 lakh employees. To all these 1 lakh employees, how much salary to be paid? Each of them, that final amount they will compute. Further, how much amount has to be paid to, how much amount has to be remitted to PF authority, how much to be remitted to ESI authority, how much to be remitted to income tax department. All that challans also they will prepare. Finally, one consolidated check they will send. This HUL has to authorize the check so that funds will be debited in HUF. It will be transferred to various beneficiaries, tax beneficiaries, provident fund authorities, employees, all that. Now tell me, if at all this payroll processing company does not implement proper controls, the computations will affect, the payments to tax authorities and all will affect, which results in non-compliance with laws and regulations. Agreed or not? Now tell me, as an auditor, should I look into this payroll function, whatever payroll processing company is doing, the workings and all? Generally, if the company itself is maintaining payroll, I will simply look into the entire payroll activity, whether they are deducting properly, whether payroll controls are proper, whether provident fund is collected properly, what controls they established, I can look into very well. But the company is not processing this. Payroll company is processing this. How can I look into? I asked the payroll company, I want to come there and I want to visit there and look into whether the controls you established for processing our employees payroll master, is it proper or not? I want to come and verify. Then ADP company replied, sir, you are not the only client we are processing. We have thousands of clients for whom we are doing payroll activity. And like you, if remaining 999 company auditors are also asking us, we should sit and explain auditors' queries only. How can I do this? You cannot come and do this. This is what the payroll company replied. Then I replied, then how can I get an assurance that you are processing the payroll and all correctly as per the law and regulation? How can I ensure? Because that's a material cost to this company, substantial cost to this company. If at all your worry is about this processing, don't worry. We will appoint a separate auditor. The payroll company replied, we will appoint a separate auditor who will verify the controls that we implemented in this payroll process. In the payroll processes, what are all controls we implemented? How are they implemented? Are they working effectively or not? All that we will appoint an auditor. He will give an audit report, and that report we will forward it to you. Are you okay with it? We asked that company auditor, the client auditor. The client auditor said, okay, no problem, I will use it. This is called type 1 and type 2 reports. These are called as what? Type 1 and type 2 report. Now, the company for whom Hindustan Unilever, we are auditor, right? The Hindustan Unilever in this example is called as user entity. We are auditors of Hindustan Unilever, right? We are called as user auditor. There is a payroll organization, ADP Incorporation, right? That is service organization. The payroll function that they are providing, right? That is a service provided by the service organization. Now, we are asking a report of auditor of this particular process, right? He is called a service auditor. Are you getting it? Now, under 402, my responsibility is to give opinion on the financial statements. My responsibility will not change. My objective is to give opinion on financials, whether they're true and fair. Inside that, I should ensure whether payroll cost is true and fair. To ensure whether payroll cost is true and fair, I need to see whether payroll activities are proper or not. Whether to see payroll activities are proper or not, it is not done by the company. It is outsourced to somebody. So their auditor said whether payroll is proper or not. Their auditors have given a report. What report he gave? Some report, SOC report we call it as. What is the report actually called as? Technically, SOC report, service organizations, systems and organizations control. What is it? Systems and organizations control report, SOC report we call. This SOC report is two types. Now, 1 minute. See, how we will get this data, First, tell me, as an auditor of my Hindustan Unilever, I want to know what controls they designed and implemented, correct? I want to know what controls they designed and implemented. Why I want to know what controls they implemented, designed, all that? To know whether objectives of the payroll are achieved or not. To know Whether objectives of payroll process. What is the objective of payroll process? Timely remittance of law, timely remittances of taxes to authorities, timely remittance of PF and ESI to respective authorities, timely remittances of salaries to employees. These are all objectives. These are all objectives. If at all timely remittance does not happen, interest, penalty and all will apply. These are the control objectives. What is it called as? Control objectives. So these are the control objectives. Now for these objectives, what controls are implemented? I want to know that information. Now these are the objectives. They implemented so and so controls, they set. Whether these both are suitable or not, we need to check whether a process implemented is suitable to achieve this objective or not. Whether a process implemented is suitable to achieve this objective or not, we want to check yes or no. That also we have to check. Sometimes we also want to check whether these controls are operating effectively or not. Sometimes we also want to check whether these controls are operating effectively or not. That also we want to check, which means I want to know as an auditor, user auditor of user entity, I told my Hindustan Unilever, I want to know what controls they implemented, what system they implemented, what objectives they listed out, whether the system they implemented is meeting the objective and whether they are operating effectively. Sometimes I may not be concerned about operating effectiveness of control because my risk assessment will not contain that requirement. For example, I am doing an audit of a private limited company whose turnover is less than 50 crore, whose borrowings are less than 25 crore, which means I am exempted from verifying operating effectiveness of internal financial control. I am exempted from verifying operating effectiveness of internal financial control. In that case, whatever payroll function you outsourced, right? There, whether the controls whatever they implemented, whether the controls whatever suitably implemented, are they working, operating, are they effectively working, are they operating effectively, I don't require. For me, controls implemented or not, whether the controls are suitable or not, that report alone I want, and that report is called as type 1 report. Suppose I am doing audit of a listed entity. For a listed entity, one of the requirement under 143 subsection 3 is I must ensure whether these internal financial controls are operating effectively or not. Some of the internal financial functions were outsourced. Controls are also made by, controls are also implemented by service organization. In such case, those financial controls, are they operating effectively or not? I want to know, right? There I will ask a type 2 report. There I will ask what? Type 2 report. If at all I have a requirement under law to verify operating effectiveness of internal control, I will also ask type 2. I will ask a type 2 report. Suppose law there is no requirement. I myself want to know operating effectiveness of these controls because significant portion of the transactions are processed. Because significant portion of transactions are processed, I want to know whether they are operating effectively or not. In that case, tell me if they are operating effectively. If I want to know, then also I want which report? Type 2 report. Now, these are the sentences that you must remember in order to understand this particular standards. Now, like you know how this entire will be achieved. You know, service organization, Amazon is there, right? Amazon management, they will prepare a chart. They will prepare a document which contains description of its system, which contains description of its system, what system they designed, what system they implemented, related description. So the document name is called as, you know, what is the document name is? Description of system. That's the document name. Service organization's description of system. That's the document name. Service organization is Amazon. Amazon's description of system. What the document contains? The document contains controls implemented, control objectives, suitability of these controls. They will give you a list what controls were implemented, what are the objectives for this control, and how far that objective is met with this. Suppose one of the control objective is employee, whatever absentees days are there, the amount has to be deducted from salary because it's a loss of pay. Yes or no? And only that amount has to be paid. That's the one of the important payroll function. For that, what control the payroll organization is asking, what control it is doing, the payroll organization is asking us the date of list of absentees, list of leaves every month. We are giving that. We are giving that. Means control objective is deduction of loss of pay. That's the objective of control. For that, what control they implemented? When they are calculating the payroll cost, they are taking into account leaves and all, which means the control which they implemented, the process which they are following, is it achieving control objective or not? That is called suitability of the control. What is it called as? Suitability of the control. So, service organization description of system. This is the document. Inside that, what controls they followed. Control is nothing but process. Some process. Getting it? What are all the processes they're following? What controls they're following? What is the objective of this? Look at that. Whether the objective is meeting this, suitable or not, you need to verify. Getting it? So, service organization system of description contains controls implemented, control objectives, whether these controls are suitable to achieve these objectives. Management of service organization will give all these assertions. Management of service organization will give all these assertions in which document? Service organization's description of system. In the document, they described all this. The document is sent to you. The document is sent to you. Dear Hindustan Unilever auditor, don't worry. These are the controls we designed. These are the controls we implemented. This is suitable. Who gave this document? Management gave. Then I ask you, since you are the management person of organization, you will say all this. But I want assurance report that whether whatever you said this in this is correct or not. I want an assurance report on description of system by service organization, description of related controls, description of control objectives, description about suitability. You describe everything, I understand, but I want an assurance report that whatever you described, no, it is really existing or not. It is existing in reality or not. I want an assurance report. For that, what Amazon is doing, they appointed service auditor. What they did? They appointed a service auditor. What service auditor is doing? He verified that entire system document. He saw the document because the document is going to be used by me. So the document is going, that's like a financial statement, which is going to be used by various others. Whatever the document contains, description, is it really implemented or not, the service auditor will verify. Whatever control objective stated, whatever controls, related controls implemented, are they suitable or not, service organization will check and he will give a report on that, and that report is called as what? Type 1 report. Now they gave me type 1 report also. First, what they gave me? Description of system, the document. Second, what they gave me? On the document, is the report, are they genuine or not, auditor is giving report. Now service auditor will use that report. Now on that context, what are all you have to do here? That is what 402 says. Understood? Now suppose I also want to know whether these controls that are described in the document, whether the control object is stated in the document, whether related controls implemented as per the document, are they operating effectively or not, also I want to know. In such a case, the service auditor has to give a report as per the type 2 format. Service auditor has to give a report as per type 2 format. What is type 1 report? What is type 2 report is what explained under 3402. Now, for whom which standard is applicable? I am auditor of Hindustan Unilever, which is outsourcing some activities to Amazon, or which is outsourcing some activities to ADP Incorporation, where they have given service auditor report. How to use that service audit report so that your overall objective of expressing opinion on financial statements will be smooth. That's 402 says. What 3402 says? Amazon appointed me. Amazon approached me. ADP Incorporation approached me. They are asking me, sir, we have so many third parties related businesses, process and all. We are being outsourced for. So we are only processing everything. Their auditors and all asking, how are we implementing these systems, functions, operating all that? You please come and do audit of all this. Give a report. That report we will forward it to those user auditors. Now here I am asking you to perform which engagement? Assurance on other than historical financial information. Assurance on controls at service organization. You are appointed as an assurance auditor. For you, which standard is applicable? 3402 is applicable. Are you getting the point? So an auditor who performed an assurance engagement under 3402 and gave an assurance report as per 3402, which may be type 1 or type 2 report, and that report the auditor of user entity is using. How to use that report? What are points you should consider? That is 402. Linked. Understood? This is not over. This standard is almost 4-5 hours discussion. I'll try to cover within another 20 minutes. Fine. So, understood all this? All of you? So what is a type 1 report? Before that, no, I will just to show you assurance report. Without watching this, you cannot understand. Without watching this, you cannot understand. This is type 2 report. This is type 2 report. Just a week ago, I guess we covered this standard in our class. So type 2 report, you see. Here, the report format is based upon old format. I told, right? Until before 1718, until up to 1718, opinion will be there somewhere in the middle. Now opinion is there on the top. 800 series also amended, where opinion comes at the first top place. And I told you for November 24, it is not applicable. For May 24, wait for I say clarification. Don't worry. Time is there. Just 2 minutes. Honestly tell me, how many of you have not seen this standard? Be honest. Not studied this standard. Okay, how many of you have not studied because you didn't understand this standard? Every time pakka question on this. 5 marks. Yes, let's continue. The main, we continuously complain saying in auditing 40 is enough. I think 70% of the crowd sitting here have this perception. 40 if I get in audit, that's enough. Why? Because they blame that auditing is not a scoring subject. Why it is not a scoring subject? Because they blame that we don't understand the subject. Whatever, no matter you read, you will not understand the subject. And when they see the time spent on audit paper is less than 50% of the time they spend on FR. If you can calculate. FR coaching number of coaching hours are 300. I don't think regular FR batch is less than 270, 250 of any faculty that is there in the market. Minimum 250 to 270. Minimum 250, let us assume. Even if you take fast track, it has 180. Crash course or fast track, it has 180, 200 hours. So mostly, let us assume you have spent approximately 250 to 260 hours minimum. On a minimum level, I'm telling you, coaching. You will read the FR subject for another 200 hours. You will read another 200 hours, revise everything, 200 to 250 hours. 500 hours you spent on FR. Keep that aside. Coming to audit. My regular class, right now which I'm taking face to face, where I spend extensive amount on each and every standard, where by the time I complete the standard, I revise 4 times the standard in the class, where I summarize the standard, and where after completing 4 or 5 standards, maybe I do again some revision of all these 4 or 5 standards briefly. And I also solve previous year questions, MTB questions, RTP questions, which are tough generally. Those questions which are not covered in ICA book, but are covered in MTP, RTP, that I will solve in the class. And practical questions from ICI, like illustrations, test your knowledge, all that questions I will solve. This entire process is less than 140 hours. Such an in-depth discussion I do. For example, for your reference, SA 260, right now I spent 17 minutes. I discussed the same 2.5 hours to 3 hours in class. More than 2 hours I discussed that in the class. What I discussed in that, It is not about in-depth. I discuss neatly and I revise it frequently in the class itself, so that you understand like how that point is different from this point is different from that, how, like in different ways I analyze in the class and somehow make the student confident of the standard. Getting it? So such a complex process itself is 140 hours. Complete regular coaching of audit CA final is 140 hours. Students will spend 100 hours on audit. Again, subsequently, they will revise. By spending, you can calculate how many number of hours you spent it. Don't say 3 months onwards I'm studying audit. Daily half an hour you're studying. Okay, daily 1 hour you're studying. In that time, half an hour you're looking at others, light, house, wall, all that. No. I am talking about number of effective hours you spend on audit is 100 to 120 later on with after coaching. Assuming you have attended such a kind of comprehensive regular class which is 140 hours. Assuming. Plus, I know none of you would have attended that much. I'm very sure. Assuming UCFR, I am taking so lowest hours, whereas in audit I'm allocating highest hours to you. For comparison, assuming you have taken highest number of hours of coaching in audit, FR lowest number of hours of coaching, lowest number of hours preparation, 450 hours FR, and highest number of hours, highest preparation amount 260 hours audit. And you say audit is not a scoring paper, FR is scoring paper. You spend double the time. In audit your expectation is 40, means in FR your expectation should be 80. You're spending, then why are you spending 450, 500 hours then? What's the point of spending 450, 500 hours then? When you are spending 240, 250 hours, you are getting 40 means, FR you are spending 500 hours means you should get 80, right? But how many of you are getting 80? Last attempt some repeaters will be there, na? Yes or no? I can say out of 100, 10 only will get 80. Remaining 90 will get 52, 55, 54, 58, 70, not even 70, sorry, 60, 62, like that. And audit they will get 38, 35, proportionate only. Proportionate to the time you spent. This is called skeptical analysis. This is called realistic and logical analysis. Okay, when I ask a student why he don't spend time on audit, no matter how much you study, you will not remember. First you didn't study. You didn't put that effort. You didn't try to understand. You never analyzed anything. Without understanding that there is a possibility of understanding, you judge the subject, don't study the subject, neglect the subject, and say auditing is not a scoring paper. Spreading this to everybody. Correctly? So, how much time you are spending? Then again this guy says, FR is scoring, that's why I'm spending more. Where? Show me 80 marks in FR. Show me 80 in FR then. That will not be there. 50, 52 only you'll get. So, this is just your mental thought process where you live in assumptions. Best example I'll tell you. Which is costly, platinum or gold? You have to tell me. Half the sound is platinum. Half the sound is gold. People never update their understanding. Gold price have exceeded platinum 10 years ago. 10 years ago. Right now, what is the platinum per gram cost, 3,500 or maybe 3,600. Gold per gram, 7,500. This is one live example where we live in assumptions. We all live in assumptions. We never update our understanding. We never update our knowledge. We never update our thought process. We live in the very old mindset. Because you judge, this is best example. How many of you spend really 400 hours plus in audit? Don't say, sir, I have spent from past 6 attempts, every attempt 150. No. That will not count. In one attempt, how many? In that way, in such a case, I will also calculate accumulated hours for FR and SFM from various attempts. So, in one attempt, if you deviate yourself by 50 hours for audit, means if you spend extra 50 hours for audit as a whole, your success rate can be enhanced like anything, which many are not ready because they don't understand this. They never understand this holistically. Yes, in order to master in audit subject, you require another 50-60 hours of additional time so that I can slowly understand and analyze, link the context, how that is different from this, how this is different from that. In both the sides analyzing, that takes little time. That analysis, many don't do that. Without doing it, they complain that it is not possible to understand. So that's it. If you ask me between FR and audit, Audit is most scoring paper, provided you spend the same time on audit. I bet you will not score less than 70 because the risk in audit is less. Risk in FR is high. Obviously, in FR and all, I will design. Right now, before I'll design, one day I'll design. Google Gemini, one question on FR, I'll design. You'll lose you'll lose mind. What is this question? I've never seen in the class. India, which recognition principle is applicable for this? You'll struggle like anything in FR. But in audit, you'll not have that struggle. Everything is predefined concept, only that will be tested in exam. Provided you have to master that content. So same hours that you put for FR, you put in audit. Mark my word, 75-80 marks you will get in that attempt. That is the true reality. I hope you understood now. Don't never complain that auditing is tough subject or boring subject like that. Until now, I hope I didn't make you bore. No, right? And the same will continue till the end of the session. Every topic I speak very realistically, very lively. It's all about the exposure the speaker has, simply speaking. If I have exposure like this, I can make it interesting for you. If I don't have exposure, I will also make it bore for you, as simple as such. For that reason only, I also always update my knowledge by discussing with all my friends in Big Fours and all. Luckily, I have so many friends in every Big Four entity. All top 7, all top Big 6, I have friends which are in senior roles. So they tell me only the peculiar issues which they are facing in audit, where I have that analysis. So that is helping me to, make you understand the subject in a better way. Within this marathon, I hope you understood what kind of we are content delivering. So this itself is a proof that auditing is not a boring subject. Just that you have to know how to read it. So look at this type 2 report. So I hope you all get 80 plus in FR so that you'll get 40 in audit. Okay. I will see how many 80s I'll get. I'll see how many 80s will be there, in this entire batch for FR. Because all of you spend more than 400 hours for sure on FR. More than 400 hours for sure you would have spent on FR. Next. This is a type 2 report. This is a type 2 report example. What is a type 2 report? In a type 2 report, we give opinion on 3 aspects. What are they? Look at this. Opinion section, you look at this. Our opinion has been formed on the basis matter outlined in the report. The criteria we used in forming our opinion are described in so and so page. See here again, there is another document called criteria document. Like the service auditor has to verify whether internal controls and objectives are suitably designed or not, right? How do you know whether they are suitable or not? Okay, control objectives and all will be there. For all these controls, there are some frameworks available. For example, in risk assessment chapter, you would have seen something called COSO framework, COBIT framework, like that. Yes or no? There are some frameworks which are there, which talks about various processes to be implemented. For achieving so and so thing, what process to be implemented? For example, ISO standards were there. More than 20,000 standards were there. In ISO, more than 20,000 standards were there dealing with variety of issues. 20,000, not 20. 20,000. We have only 46 auditing standards. That's it. Where is 20,000 standards? Where is 46? So ISO standards, there are 20,000 plus standards were there which are talking about various things. Like suppose you want to establish a hotel, what points you should establish, what control points you should put. There is an ISO standard. You want to construct a movie theater, what points you have to keep in mind, what points, checkpoints and all you should keep. There is an ISO standard. The same way, a payroll company is processing payroll for various clients. What points should be designed, what objective should be achieved, what should be the controls that they should design and implement. Like that, some standard will be there. Based on that standard only, companies will design processes. Companies will design processes based on those standards. That standard is the criteria against which auditor will evaluate. Against which auditor? For example, we are doing audit of financial statements, right? Against what criteria we are evaluating? We are evaluating financial statements against applicable financial reporting framework. Applicable financial reporting framework means what? Depending upon the nature of entity, it may be Banking Regulation Act, Companies Act, or it may be Insurance Act, it may be Ind AS, Accounting Standard, whatever. So same way, service auditor should verify whether description of system of controls, control objectives by the management, implemented by the management, are they as per the suitable criteria? Are they as per the criteria, well established criteria? Auditor also, the service auditor will check whether these controls are against that criteria or not. Simple. The company will design as per the criteria. Auditor has to check whether that criteria is followed. So for us, when we are doing controls audit, we verify whether controls are listed out properly, whether the control objectives are listed out properly. We of course apply our judgment. In addition to that, we also see what criteria management followed, whether that criteria is achieved or not. So that is what the meaning. The opinion formed on the basis of criteria, we will verify. In our opinion, in all material respects, the description fairly present the system as designed and implemented, which means whatever management gave a description document, description of systems, whether the description fairly present the system as implemented throughout the period, whether controls related to the objectives stated in the description. The same description contains list of controls, control objectives, whether these are suitably designed and implemented throughout the period, and the controls tested. This third point will be there in type 2 report only. In type 1 report, third point will not be there. Further, in type 2 report only, the period will be there. In the type 1 report only, date will be there. As on a particular date will be there. Remember, in type 1 report, it is only on a particular date. Whereas in a type 2 report, it is for a particular period. Understood? So, the auditor, which by the way, I am reading which audit report? Service auditor's report. Service auditor is giving opinion on description of system that is given by the management, where the system is designed and given as a description based on some criteria. Yes or no? Whether the description fairly present the actual system designed and implemented, whether controls related to the objectives are suitably designed or not, whether the controls tested, are they operating effectively throughout the period or not. So throughout the period, operating throughout the period, suitably designed throughout the period, system designed and implemented throughout the period. Three aspects: whether system designed and implemented throughout period, control objectives and related controls are suitably implemented throughout the period, are they operating effectively throughout the period. This is what type 2 audit report will contains. Not only that, in type 2 audit report, the auditor shall give description of controls tested, result of the pages, description, specific controls tested, and results of those tests. Even in a type 2 report, the auditor, service auditor, has to give an annexure. What annexure? What controls he tested, what result he got. That report also he must attach it to the service auditor report. And this entire bunch, what is there here? Service auditor report is there, list of controls he tested, what is the result, it is there, management description of system of their management description of system they designed and implemented, suitability of the controls and control objectives, whether they are operating effectively or not, management gave a report. That report, entire bunch, we user auditors will get. Understood? Now tell me here, and you see here, service auditor should give another disclosure. In the service auditor report, he must also give disclosure clearly. This service audit report is purely useful only for user auditors of the user entity. For their purpose only, service auditor is doing audit. 3402 standard is applicable for the service auditor only when his report is ultimately being used by user auditors as per 402. Only then. Suppose a company called me. They just called me to do controls audit. Sir, you just come, do various controls audit which we implemented. You give a report on that. I asked, for whom the report? No, sir, the report is for internal purpose, not for any outsider. 3402 standard will not apply to me. 3402 standard is applicable to me when the company called me as a service auditor, where my report is given to various user auditors. That's an assurance engagement. 3402 applicable. Suppose company called me to verify controls, just to give a report of test of controls and result thereof to the company. Company itself uses. Third party is not there. That's an agreed upon procedure. What is it? That's an agreed upon procedure. That's a related service. Because related service versus assurance service, what is the only difference? In an assurance service, third party is using a report. In a related service, there is no third party. Simple logic. Clear? Okay. Fine, right? Yes. Yeah. To know, like, I want to know whether you understood or not. So you can clap. Okay. Not that many. Just 2 or 3 claps enough. Okay. Yeah, fine. Let's be active. Okay. Once we complete any topic, how, like, everyone are okay means you should reply me with clap. Okay. எஸ், தேவையில்லாம ரிப்ளை கொடுக்கூடாது அப்படி. Yeah. Then, so service organization report, the heading you see, independent service auditors assurance report on description of control, their design and operating effectiveness. Whereas in type 1, operating effectiveness will not be there. Are you getting it? Scope, the service auditor explaining what is their scope of work. Service auditor explaining management responsibilities. XYZ organization is responsible for preparing the description. Yes or not? So and so page means to this audit report some pages are there. There it is attached. What they attached? Description of system. Who prepared it? Management prepared it. Including completeness, accuracy, providing the services, stating control objectives, designing, implementing them, effectively operating the controls. For entirely who is responsible? Management of service organization, management of Amazon, management of ADB incorporation is responsible. Then what is service auditor responsibility? My responsibility is to express opinion. We conduct our audit, we conduct our assurance as per 3402. You know, our objective is to verify whether description present fairly, whether they're suitably designed, whether they're operating effectively. This is my responsibility. Then finally, here we are saying an assurance engagement is a report which is a reasonable assurance engagement. Reasonable assurance engagement is a high level of assurance but not absolute assurance. Even after we verify, some deviations in the controls will be there which we will not identify, like that some discussion, and we believe that evidence obtained by us is sufficient and appropriate. This is actually called as service auditor responsibility. Within this itself, basis for service auditor opinion is also given. Getting it? Then they are talking about limitations. Service auditors will have some limitations, that also they are talking about. Then finally, opinion. Are you clear? Now still now you see, in the example which I told, the company which is like Hindustan Unilever, they have to give employee master data and payroll data, attendance data periodically to service organization, right? Who should ensure that attendance reports, employee master are accurate and complete? Who should ensure? User entity, correct? Hindustan Unilever should ensure. Now, to ensure that this employee master data is accurate, to ensure that the computation of attendance, everything, that attendance and all reports are accurate, who should implement the controls? Management of user entity, Hindustan Unilever. Now, these controls are called as complementary user entity controls. These controls are actually called as what? Complementary user entity controls. Now tell me, entire payroll cost, whether it is rightly processed or not, it not only depends upon controls implemented by service organization, it also depends upon user entity controls that are complementing these controls. You're getting it? That's why you say complementary user entity control definition. Controls that the user entity implements, these are the controls the service organization assumes that the user entity implemented in design of their service. You're getting it? That's a complementary user entity control definition. If you understand this entire backdrop of the standard, you read the standard now, you will understand very easily. Like I will briefly discuss the key questions in the standard. So first, when the user entity where you're doing audit under 402, I'm talking about 402, or else I'll do one thing. 3402 will finish and then come back to 402. Three 543. 3402. The standard says introduction itself. The introduction itself, you see, object to scope of the standard itself. The scope of the standard itself says the standard does not deal with report only on controls at service organization. Where your report is not going to third parties, then the standard will not apply. Then which standard is applicable? Agreed upon procedure standard will apply. Or to report only on controls at service organization other than those related to user entities. Suppose service organization called me. Yeah, I have to report on operating effectiveness or design all that controls. But these are the controls not related to user entity, some other controls. Then also the standard will not apply to me. Are you clear? In other words, when the standard is applicable to me, if I was called for doing assurance on, if I was called for doing audit of controls that are relevant to services provided to user entities by service organization, then those controls are relevant. Yes or no? Now, what is the service organization? Service organization is a third party organization that provides services to user entities that are likely to be relevant to user entity internal control as it relates to financial reporting. For user entity internal control system, whatever service organization services are provided, no, they're affecting user entity internal controls. They're affecting the user entity business process, which is affecting the user entity financial reporting process. Now, so what do you mean by service auditor? Service auditor objective is what? What is the objective of service auditor? To obtain reasonable assurance whether in all material respects based on suitable criteria, service organization description is implemented throughout the period. Service organization controls are suitably designed throughout the period. Where in the scope of engagement, if it is included, controls operated effectively and were achieved throughout the period. If the engagement also include operating effectiveness point, then that also. Otherwise, only first 2 points, correct? And finally, once you get the reasonable assurance, you have to report it. How you have to report it? Type 1 or type 2, depending upon the scope of the engagement. What is a type 1 report? Type 1 report, no? Type 1 report will contain opinion. Type 1 report, a service auditor's assurance report. Type 1 report is a service auditor's assurance report that conveys assurance on matters referred in the above. What matters? A written assertion by service organization. A written assertion by service means a written representation by service organization management that the description fairly presents, that is designed and implemented at a specified date. The controls related to control objectives are designed as at a specified date, and on the specified date, whatever controls they are saying that design and implemented, whatever control objectives and related controls and and suitability of this, whatever they are saying on a specified date, whatever management is asserting this, is it true and fair or not? We have to give a reasonable assurance. Are you clear? 3402 standard is also reasonable assurance. 3400 standard is limited assurance. 3400 limited, there they use the word moderate assurance. They use the word moderate assurance. Then what is the difference between limited assurance and moderate? No difference, just a context alone is different, that's it. And what about type 2 report? In type 2 report, the management will give a description that fairly presents service organization systems as designed and implemented throughout the period. Management will give a description about controls that are stated in the description and are they designed suitably throughout the period, and whether controls are operating effectively throughout the period. So management will give all these points in the description. Now the service auditor has to give an assurance report on the above description. That's a type 2 report, correct? Next. Now when service auditor is performing the audit, this is not required. This may be asked as a 4 marks question. Objective may be asked as a 4 marks question. Write about type 1 and type 2 report, that can be asked as a 4 marks question. Objectives of the service auditor can be asked as a 4 marks question. Anyway, this can be tested. 3402 standard can be tested in any way. Now, when service auditor when he is performing this engagement, just like us, he should also take some written representations, right? Of course, he will read the service organization controls which they designed and implemented. He will test the operating effectiveness, all that he will do. In addition to that, service auditor will ask for a representation. What points representation letter will contain? Service auditor may request the service organization to provide written representation regarding description of the system, that they has provided all the information to the auditor, that they had disclosed to the auditor all the non-compliances, that they had disclosed to the service auditor deficiencies, they have disclosed about controls that are not operated effectively, any subsequent events up to the date of assurance report, any subsequent event up to the date of assurance report, that also should be disclosed to service auditor. Whose responsibility to disclose all this? Service organization's management is responsible to disclose service auditor. What are the relevant information that is relevant for service auditor? Non-compliance with laws and regulations and frauds, design deficiencies, controls that are not operated effectively, subsequent events after the reporting period till service auditor's assurance report. That is what, right? After balance sheet date till the date of financial statements. Here it is after reporting period till the service auditor's assurance report. Whatever subsequent events were there, that also has to be informed to service auditor. For all this, we must get a representation from the service organization's management. Clear? So lengthy. Now, what are the elements of assurance report? This itself we have a concept in ICA book itself. What are the elements of assurance report? We have just now seen entirely. We have just now seen entirely. Now, you know, they'll give you this question. They'll give you this question in 3402. The objective of the service auditors is to give an assurance report. In case the service auditor has to give a report on operating effectiveness, what are the additional matters a service auditor will include in a type 2 report? They will ask you this question. What are the additional matters required reporting in type 2 report? What additional matters? Very simple. Service auditor's report, assurance report shall include a separate section. After opinion section, what you will put in separate section? What are the test of controls that were performed and result of those tests? Just now we have seen the format. Opinion immediately, test of controls are performed and result thereof. Correct? And while designing the while describing the test of controls, you need to put a list of test of controls, right? How service auditor give, you know, they will give it as an annexure. Just like how we give CARO as an annexure, they will give list of controls they tested as a annexure to the audit report, assurance auditor's report. Correct? They give it as an annexure. In that annexure, what they should mention? They should clearly describe what controls they tested, clearly state that controls were tested, identify the items tested represent all or selection. How you tested? On a random basis or 100%? What are the nature of test you performed? Like reperformance, inquiry, observation. How you tested? That and all you should give. If deviations are identified, service auditor shall include extent of test performed to identification of deviation. When you found the deviation, after how many repeated tests you found the deviation, that information, the service auditor shall report deviations, even if the related control objectives were achieved. Though there is a deviation, control objective is still achieved. Though control is not followed properly, control objective is achieved. Means the overall system is effective, person is effective. Though the control there is a deviation, the person working effectively, still control deviation is there, right? You must report the deviation. These are all the points the service auditor additionally has to report in case of type 2 report. This itself can be asked as a 4 marks question. Clear? Write about modified opinion in service auditor's assurance report. Like, will a service auditor give a modified opinion also? Obviously, just like us, he will also give modified opinion. Suppose, no? See, what is his objective? His objective is to obtain reasonable assurance whether description of system by the management, is it the real system that they designed and implemented? Whether the description of control objectives and controls that they implemented, are they suitable? 3, whether the controls are operating effective or not, you need to obtain reasonable assurance, right? If at all you found description is not proper, or control objectives and controls implemented are not suitable to each other, or third segment, controls are not operating effectively. In all these 3 cases, will you give a modified opinion or not? Yes or no? If either controls are not operating effectively, or controls were not suitably designed, or controls what they described in the document, what really existing or different, then also you will give what? Modified opinion. Not only that, you will give modified opinion in a case where you are unable to get this evidence. If you are unable to get this information also, you will give modified opinion. You see, there are 4 circumstances. They'll give you this 4 marks question. Under what circumstances the service auditor shall issue a modified opinion? 1, if the description is not fairly presented, if controls are not suitably implemented, controls tested are not operating effectively, or you are unable to obtain sufficient appropriate evidence. In all these cases, service auditor shall give a modified opinion. And not only that, whenever you are giving modified opinion, you should clearly describe the reason why you gave a modified opinion. The same reason is there for us, the same requirement is there for us in financial statement audit also. That's it. And finally, service auditor has to document the following. What are they? How service auditor has to document? In such a way, you should document in such a way that another service auditor who don't have any connection with this audit, By looking at your documentation, he should understand how you performed the audit, what are the results, what are the significant matters, what conclusions you reached, what professional judgment you applied. All that he should understand, even though he don't have any connection to audit. By just looking at documentation, he must understand how you planned to perform the audit, how you tested the controls, what are the results of the controls, conclusions reached, judgments reached, assumptions used. All that he should understand. In such a way, you should maintain documentation. Clear? Listening alone is not sufficient. After this, you have to read. 340T is over. 340T is over. Confident? Yeah. Confident on this? 40T is not over yet. 40T is there. Now, so we are the auditor of the user entity. We are the auditor of user entity. We are user auditor. Now, when I get to know that the user entity is using service organization services, like user entity is using services of so many service organization, cloud services they are using, third party services they are using, for supply of manpower, security guards and all, also some organization is providing services. That and all relevant to me? Are they all relevant to me? No. What services provided by service organization are relevant to the user auditor? What services are relevant? If at all, service organization services are part of user entity information system, including process, if they are relevant to financial reporting, which are affecting the following. If the services provided by service organization is affecting user entity information system, related controls, and is affecting financial reporting process, including the following. If at all services provided by service organization is affecting significant class of transactions, it is affecting the way entity record the transactions and report in the financials, it is affecting accounting records maintenance by the entity, it is affecting the way entity captures events and conditions, it is affecting journal entries, it is affecting financial reporting process. Those services which are provided by service organization that are related to user entity information system, related internal controls, related to financial reporting, they are relevant. If the services are affecting significant class of transaction, if they are affecting accounting records, if they are affecting journal entries, if they are affecting financial reporting process, if they are affecting the way we initiate the process, record the transaction, any of this is affected, then only the services are said to be relevant. Ultimately, it's a matter of professional judgment of the auditor whether services provided by service organization are relevant to the auditor. For example, some manpower service, security guards are provided by some service organization for this company. Is that service relevant for the auditor? No. You are getting the point? Now, okay, you understood there are providing some services, you understood that they are relevant. What you need to understand now? You need to understand services provided by service. This was asked many times for 4 marks. Write about understanding of services provided by service organization by the user auditor. Like you need to understand what service they are providing. Now you understood that they are affecting financials. Now what service they are providing? Nature of service, payroll, inventory maintenance, accounting records maintenance, what reconciliations, GST reconciliation work, what exactly they are providing. What is the materiality of the transactions processed? Okay, they are providing GST related. How much percentage or volume of the transactions, materiality of the transactions they are processing? Check out. Sometimes the transaction processed may not be material, but the nature of transaction processed may be significant because they are processing something related to law and regulation. So though the amount involved is less, non-compliance results in punishment, so that may be significant. Degree of interaction, how frequently the service organization and management are interacting, how our company and service, how far they are interacting in this service. Generally interaction will be more when the complexity is more. And what is the relationship? We should also analyze what is the user entity and service organization relationship between them. Are they related parties? Are they controlled by common ownership? Like, is there any such kind of link? We will try to identify. Why are we doing all this? To do risk assessment. To do risk assessment. So when you are understanding the entity and environment, you have to evaluate internal controls that are implemented by user entities. As a part of risk assessment, you are supposed to evaluate internal controls implemented by user entity. But on many business processes, they were outsourced to service organization. Therefore, controls relating to that user entity did not implement. Controls are implemented at service organization. So understand services provided by service organization by asking user entity. Where you will get this understanding? Above, in the previous question, they said you should understand, right? You should understand. How do you understand? Ask user entity first. Suppose if user entity is not able to give you full clear picture, then do one thing, ask them type 1 or type 2 report. Type 1 report is called as SOC1 report. Type 2 report is called as SOC2 report. In 402, we use the word type 1 and type 2. International 402, 3402, ISA 3402, it uses the word SOC1, SOC2. You're getting the point. So obtain the report. Suppose report is not there, contact them. Suppose they are unable to respond, visit them. You don't have time to visit, send another auditor to visit to perform the engagement. Are you clear? Yes or no? So this itself can be asked as a 4 marks question. If auditor is unable to understand the services provided by service organization by interacting with the user entity, what the user auditor has to do? Obtain type 1 or type 2 report, contact them, visit them, or you arrange another to visit, to go there and perform the procedure so that you will understand services provided by service organization. Correct? Now, suppose I decided to use type 1 or type 2 report. Suppose type 1 or type 2 report is there. I need not go there. Happy. Type 1 or type 2 report is there. You want to use that report. What points you should check? You should check. Don't blindly use it. Who is this service auditor? You should check, right? What is his competence? What is his eligibility? What is his capability? You should check, right? Maybe service organization formality said they prepared some audit report by dummy user auditor, dummy service auditor. So you should check competence of the service auditor. Generally, this checking is not required if the service auditor is a chartered accountant like you. Getting it? And independence also you should check. What standards the service auditor is following in issuing the report. In the service audit report, he will mention whether which standard he followed. In the report of type 2 which I showed, we performed assurance engagement as per 3402, they said. Like that, some point they will tell. See that. Suppose you decided to use type 1 or type 2 report. You decided. When you will decide to use this? After evaluating his competence, after evaluating his independence, after evaluating his standards, what he followed, you decided. When you are using, evaluate whether description of the control is appropriate. Whatever control they described, no, service organization, is that control correct for payroll processing? Check out. And obtain sufficient appropriate evidence. Obtain sufficient appropriate evidence regarding the internal overall controls. Getting it? Further, no, when the service organization services we are using, no, our user entity has to implement certain controls. We have to test these controls also, so that payroll processing overall correct or not. Not only service organization controls, related to that user entity also should implement certain controls. Those controls are called as what? Complementary user entity controls. The auditor has to obtain an understanding of whether user entity has designed and implemented such complementary user entity controls. Correct? So when you decided to use type 1 or type 2 report, check whether what is his competence, what is his independence, and what is what standards using which he prepared these reports, he performed this engagement, to get an understanding whether description and design of control at service organization, is it okay for your purpose of audit? Is that okay, acceptable for you? 2, what controls user entity implemented, get sufficient appropriate evidence for that also. That's it. Finally, suppose you identified some risk. Suppose you identified some risk, whether sufficient appropriate evidence is there from the records available. First check out whatever records you have seen. Is it okay? Sufficient? Are you okay? Are you feeling sufficient regarding the services provided by them, controls implemented by them? If at all it is not sufficient, auditor generally perform further audit procedure. Auditor generally perform further audit. In some cases, In some cases, if auditor's risk assessment include an expectation that controls are operating effectively, when auditor generally will verify operating effectiveness, generally when there is a legal requirement under Companies Act, then he will verify. Otherwise, he himself feels that it is necessary. Generally, when there is IFC operating effectiveness requirement, then you will verify. So what you will verify? You will obtain a type 2 report. You will see whether test of controls. I mean, you obtain a type 2 report. If type 2 report is there, happy. If type 2 report is not there, you go and perform test of controls to know operating effectiveness of controls at service organization. Suppose you are unable to go, then you will use another auditor to perform test of controls on behalf of the user auditor. Generally, if I want to know operating effectiveness of controls at service organization, ask type 2 report. If type 2 report is not available, you visit and perform the test of controls. If that is not possible, arrange another auditor. Very simple. Clear? Now, suppose you decided to use type 2 report. Suppose you want to know operating effectiveness of type, you want to know operating effectiveness, you want to use type 2 report. If at all you are planning to use type 2 report, what points you should keep in mind? You should, of course, you should verify whether the description, design and operating effectiveness of control, is it at a particular date or is it for a particular period? Generally, type 2 reports are for a particular period. Whether complementary user entity controls are identified. If so, get an understanding of these controls, test their operating. Complementary user entity controls, whether they're operating effectively, and you should only test directly. Why? These controls are implemented in the organization you are doing audit, user entity. They are not implemented by service organization. And look at the adequacy of the time period lapsed. Suppose already company tested. When they tested last time, you see. When they tested last time, you see. If the time gap, is it okay? If no, ask management to test again or you test again. Finally, whether test of controls performed by service organization, are they relevant to the assertion that is relevant for auditor's risk assessment? Suppose service auditor verified controls regarding data accuracy. He has not verified amount accuracy and all, he didn't verify. Then that may not be useful for me. So determine whether service organization assertion addressed, is it relevant for auditor's purpose or not. Then finally, suppose after evaluating all this type 1, type 2, all these reports, you found some material misstatements because you found some mistakes, because service auditor gave some qualified opinion. If you investigated that, it resulted in material misstatement in the entity. What opinion you will give directly? You will give modified opinion, yes or no. So the auditor shall inquire management of the user entity whether service organization reported any non-compliance with law, frauds, uncorrected misstatements, all that. Because service organization is processing entire payroll, right? They may do frauds. There may be a possibility. In that case, service organization has to report the user entity. Even service auditor of service organization should get a representation from the management that all the frauds, non-compliances shall be disclosed to the service auditor. That service auditor will highlight in his service auditor report. That's how we will get to know. Are you clear? Should I refer about service auditor? Should I refer about type 1, type 2 report about that in the user audit report? No need. You are only responsible ultimately for the opinion you are expressing. Just because you are using service auditor report, you cannot blame him that he is responsible ultimately for the opinion. For the opinion, you are only responsible. If at all his workings contain something wrong, he will answerable. He is answerable. That's a different story. You prove that you followed 402 enough. He will prove whether he followed 3402 or not. Whether he followed 3402, that is not your responsibility. Whether you followed 402 is not his responsibility. Getting it? So suppose if sufficient appropriate evidence is not obtained, like type 1 report, type 2 report, nothing, you're not getting any data about controls implemented by service organization, then what opinion you'll give? You will give modified opinion. In that case, you may feel like in order to explain people why you give modified opinion, you may talk about service auditor's report. Generally, if you are giving unmodified opinion, is there any necessity for you to explain that you have used a type 1 report, type 2 report, all that? Nothing. Now, what is the outline of the standard? Very simple. I have to do audit of the financial statements. In order to the audit of financials, I have to do risk assessment. If I have to do risk assessment, I have to test controls. If I have to test controls, many processes they outsource it to service organization, which means controls are not implemented by this organization. Controls are implemented by service organization. What controls are implemented, whether they're suitable or not, whether they're operating effectively or not, I want to know. If at all the process is done here, I would have got that evidence, but the process is done by whom? Service organization. So the same, whatever I ask for my client, I am asking for from service organization, and they give me type 1 and type 2 report. Before using type 1 1 and type 2 report, what are we doing? Whether he is competent, independence or not, standards followed or not, is this evidence, whatever that report contains no data, is that data relevant for my audit or not? Like that I'm checking and concluding, correct? This is the over broad that you should keep in mind when you're reading the standard. Clear? 6 hours is what we discussed the standard and 3402 to understand exactly, because in this there are many references to CA intercontent. Many references were there regarding CA inter. Like suppose deviation in control means what? Like that we discussed very in depth. That's the difference. Clear all of you? I think 1.5 hours I spent. 1 hour I spent. 1 hour I spent. That's it. Thank you. Clear on this, all of you? Full matter clear in mind. So with this understanding, now you read this standard, for sure 5 marks. I am telling you, it will take for you at least 3 to 4 hours to master the standard. Minimum time I'm telling you. Minimum 3 to 4 hours it will take to master the standard. Read, repeat it. You're not understanding, don't leave it. Repeat reading slowly. See, suppose you're not understanding a sentence, break it in different way and read. Break it in different way. The sentence, break it in different way and read. You will understand. Then you're not understanding. Again, break it in different way and read. That struggle you have to take. Getting it? Then you will get a overall command. That process take 3 to 4, sometimes 5 hours. For that you are getting 5 marks. Getting it? Yeah.